Cmas, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this morning's webinar. Joining me today from Cmas, I have Jin Pei and Robbie Richardson, two of our Appian consultants who helped to put together this demonstration. So before we begin, has everybody got good sound quality? I'm not sure. Jin, Robbie, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine, Dave.
Yep, same here.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me see here. Just jump into. So to start out, we're just going to do a really short kind of overview in terms of what the technology looks like that we're demonstrating today. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. This is just a high-level kind of conceptual architecture of the three platforms that we've put together for the purposes of this demonstration. So on the top left, we have the Salesforce platform. Salesforce, as you know, is a very popular customer relationship management system, CRM, and it is cloud-based. So we have Salesforce on the top left. In the middle, we have Appian, which is really the core of this demonstration. And then on the bottom left, we have what we're calling a CMIS-based enterprise content management platform. So CMIS, again, it's an open standard for sharing content between systems. And as you can see a couple of the logos on the bottom of the screen, the key vendors that have implemented CMIS or CMIS are Alfresco, Microsoft with SharePoint, OpenText, Documentum, and FileNet. There's a few others as well. So really the goal for this webinar is to kind of show you how you can use Appian to integrate business processes that include endpoints in Salesforce, as well as manage documents from the process and push them into a CMIS-based endpoint. So the second slide gets a little more technical. Basically, what we've done for the webinar is we've taken Appian's CMIS connector and we've extended it. So we've extended it at the back end, and we've also extended it at the user interface layer. So Robbie has been working on what we're calling our Cmas Explorer, and it's basically an Appian sale user interface widget that we can use in any Appian process so that you can browse into or access documents from your CMIS-based repository. The interesting thing here is we're not stuck with just accessing content from a single repository. We can federate multiple repositories under one user interface. So for organizations that have, for example, SharePoint as well as Documentum, we can provide a user interface where the end user isn't aware of the back-end storage system. They just see different links to content, some of the content being in, for example, SharePoint, and other content being in Documentum. So just before we get going with the webinar, the demonstration, I will kind of walk you through the steps for the demonstration in terms of giving you a mental model for the business context that the demonstration fits within. Okay, here we go. So again, this was the demonstration that we built for Appian World 2015, which was in Washington, D.C. At the end of April. So the context is there's a telco company. We call it Big Telco. That's our fictitious company's name. And in Big Telco, there's different actors. So the actors we have are a salesperson, and the salesperson's job is to work with wholesale customers and sell them services. So the scenario that we've set up just to make the demonstration interesting is basically a sales rep who's selling off of a master services agreement to different hotels. And they're selling different products. They're selling internet products. They're selling content products. So they start out working in Salesforce. After they've gone through and they've closed the business with the customer at a hotel chain, they basically need to interact with the folks that manage the fulfillment and the contract oversight for their business process. And that's where Appian comes in. So Appian is basically taking the handoff from Salesforce, and it's supporting the validation that there is actually capacity to deliver the services, as well as contract review to make sure that the contract makes sense commercially. Once that's done, Appian's also taking the information out of Salesforce. It's generating a PDF document, and it's parking that PDF document in a CMIS endpoint. So again, in this case, we're using Alfresco because it's open source, but Alfresco, for all intents and purposes, could have been Documentum, FileNet, SharePoint, etc. So just quickly to walk you through the steps. Sales team member, they're working inside of Salesforce. They get to the point in their selling process where they close the business. Once the business is closed, Salesforce has a trigger which kicks off a new workflow process in Appian. Some of the basic information from Salesforce is passed in, just an identifier to link Appian back to Salesforce. But past that, the Appian process actually goes back and queries Salesforce using the standard Appian connectors. Next, there's a service fulfillment team member who's logged into Appian who gets a new task. Again, the task is to review the potential contract and ensure that there's actually capacity to fulfill it before it's signed off. Once the capacity piece has been vetted, it goes off to a contract manager in Appian. They can basically review that, yes, there's capacity, they can review the financials, and they can approve it. Having completed the approval, Appian again automatically generates a new contract. In this case, it is Microsoft Word. Create the folder in the document repository, and it commits the document. Appian also uploads the location of the document in the repository back to Salesforce. And now the team members back in Salesforce, so the original sales person who closed the business, is now able to see a link right in Salesforce that can get them into the document repository. So this is the process we'll take you through. The concept is that, again, Appian can orchestrate the process from end to end. It can help you open up Salesforce to the rest of your business, and it can also make sure that once your business process is complete, all of your key documents are stored where they should be. So without any more ado, we'll jump into the actual demonstration here. Just to check, Robbie, how's the audio? Is it working okay?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. And can you see my screen?
Correct, I can. You are painting well, so so far so good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the fictitious company is called Big Telco. Of course, it has the Bits and Glass logo, and no, we're not entering into the telco industry. So we have the salesperson, and their name is Susie Sales. And for anyone familiar with Salesforce, this is really a vanilla Salesforce org. So this is Big Telco's Salesforce environment for interacting with customers and running opportunity cycles. So as Susie Sales, I'm basically going to go into the Opportunities tab, and I'm going to kick off a new opportunity. Okay, so this is pretty much the vanilla out-of-the-box Salesforce opportunity page. So I'm just going to set up a few information points to get going with this opportunity. I'll just call the opportunity the video on demand webinar, something that we can remember. And then again, standard Salesforce functionality. I'm going to go pick a customer. In this case, I'll use Holiday Inn. I'll set up the close date, which I'll set for today. And I'll set us up for the proposal price quote opportunity stage. Finally, there is an existing master services agreement with the Holiday Inn. I have a couple of contracts to pick from in terms of the MSA, so I will pick 114 And that's pretty much it. So I'll save right now. So at this point, Susie Sales has created this new opportunity in Salesforce. So the next thing that Susie needs to do is to add some products. So her customer from Holiday Inn's called her up and basically let her know, hey, I have these 10 hotels. I'm bringing them online. I'm not happy with the other provider. And I want to add a few content services that I think Big Telco can provide. So I'm going to go over now to the products link. I'm going to add a few products to this opportunity. And again, this is standard Salesforce functionality. There's nothing really custom going on here. So I'm going to add in NHL. I'm going to have some Raptors, a little super channel, video on demand. So these are some services that my hotel guests, or sorry, Holiday Inn's hotel guests might be interested in. Just going to put in some quantities. Again, standard Salesforce functionality. So now I have a number of products added to the opportunity. I have some quantities. The pricing, again, comes out of the Salesforce price book. That's all set up. I didn't kind of fool around with that too much. I hit save. So I'll go back to the opportunity. At this point, you can see the amount's changed. The opportunity has been calculated to be $130,000. So just to kind of move through the webinar, I'll skip this next step, which would be really publishing a quote, sending it out to the customer, having them sign it or initial it, and sending it back. So at this point, let's assume they come back and they said, hey, you know, we're pretty happy with the quote that you gave us. We have this NHL network, Raptors TV, Super Channel, video on demand. That's exactly what we asked you for. Sounds good. Customer is good to go. So Susie goes in then, and she opens up the opportunity stage, pick list, and at this point, she can move to close one. And she goes, okay. And then, of course, you need to hit save. Okay, so what we've done so far is really out-of-the-box vanilla Salesforce functionality. We've gone in, we've created an opportunity, we've associated it with a Salesforce contract, added a couple of opportunity products, basically changed the status of the opportunity to close one. And at this point, what our solution does is it kicks off a new process over on the Appian side. So I'm going to jump into Appian right now, and let's have a look and see what we have here. So I'm going to jump into the tasks page. And you can see here, there is a new task. For demo purposes, I'm actually performing both the role of the fulfillment team to validate that there's actually capacity for the order, and I'm also the contract approver. But of course, in a typical situation, I would be one or the other, not both. So this first task, you can see, is denoted. It's for a primary approver. Again, verify plant capacity for Holiday Inn video on demand webinar opportunity. So I'll click on that. And we are now put into the task page for this. So again, there's other people in my work group, so I should accept the task if I want to work with it. I'll go accept. Now it's mine to work with. And I'll just kind of highlight a few things on this page. So basically, you can see from Salesforce, we brought in the contract information. We have hyperlinks now actually to both the contract and the account. So for example, as the fellow doing a capacity kind of vetting, which I am right now, or later on as the contract approver, if I need a little more information, I can just click on either one of these hyperlinks, and it'll take me right back into Salesforce. And in this case, I'm looking at the Holiday Inn account page. So we've not only provided the data to do the task, but also hyperlinks into Salesforce in case you want to jump in and basically validate some of the information before making a decision. This is the information for the contract. The next section presents summary information from the opportunity. So again, you can see the person is Susie Sales, and again, it's linked, so we could jump in and have a look at Susie if we wanted to. the amount the opportunities in there, $130,000, close date. And then we also went back and we pulled out the opportunity product details. So you can see we have NHL network, we have Raptors TV, Super Channel, and video on demand. So this is again based on functionality built into Appian. I believe it came out last summer in Appian 7.5 or 7.6, which provides Appian customers with a Salesforce connector. So it allows you as a solution designer with Appian to basically tap into just about anything that's sitting within a Salesforce org. As you can see, it can include rich media like these icons that we pulled up as well. So scrolling down towards the bottom, you can see we have really a couple of steps. So there's the submitted step. We're right now in the primary approvals, which is again to validate the plant capacity. And there is the final approval, which is more of a commercial step to make sure that the agreement makes sense. So moving ahead, I'll just approve. I'll make a comment. We have capacity. And I'm going to click on the approval button. Okay. So at this point, the process moves on to the next step, which is for commercial approval. And you can see now I refresh the task screen, the task list, sorry, and I can see here's the final approval, Holiday Inn, video on demand, webinar opportunity. So I will click on it. And basically, we repurposed the first screen. Looks pretty much the same. Again, we could make different variations depending on the information requirements for each of the roles. At the bottom of the screen, I can scroll down and try to see what the comments were from the fulfillment team member, because I'm the kind of commercial contract approver. And it says we have capacity, it was Tom, and it was today. So I feel like at this point I'm ready to do this work. So I hit accept. I'm going to take on this task. And again, I'm logged in right now as a super user, so I can kind of take tasks from everybody, but normally this would just be for contract management folks. And I could go down and set to approved. And I can say it looks good. Okay. So I will approve now. So at this point, our demo application is basically finishing off that final approval step. It presents us with the new contract information. So we've given the end user the ability to select the name of the folder in their content repository. You know, we've kind of created a default naming convention, but we can also override. So in this case, I'll just accept that. It's going to be 114 VOD webinar op. And in the next screen, if we wanted to add some comments here, we could as well for the repository. So I'll submit that. Okay, so finally, we're presented with a link, and this link actually is to our content repository, and it's specifically to the document that we've just generated with Appian. So I'm going to open this up right now. And now you can see we're sitting in Alfresco. This is the Alfresco logo for those of you who aren't familiar. Alfresco is like, again, SharePoint or Documentum. There's a hierarchical structure of folders, so repository, contracts, and we're sitting down in the folder for our specific opportunity, 114 VOD webinar opportunity. And now you can see the document, the Microsoft Word document that's been generated by Appian, includes the same information that you saw in Appian. So we've got the contract details, that's Susie sales, the contract term period. We've got some of the opportunity highlights, again, $130,000, the close date. And finally, we've actually got a list of products, again, this NHL network, Raptors TV, the quantities, the prices. We have who signed the deal on our side at Bid Telco, and then we have the customer's signature title. So again, this is just a sample. With the Appian document generator, you can pretty much generate any kind of a format you want. And at some level, you can add in your corporate branding, so your look and feel. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into Appian. I'm going to set this as done. And just have a couple of more, look into a couple more things that have happened for us. So first off, we've published to the newsfeed in Appian. So as Appian users will be aware of, Appian added kind of a newsfeed capability. We're probably moving on a couple of years ago now. So you can see over here in the newsfeed, we basically posted, and this would be for group members who are interested in seeing these events come up. Maybe it's a contract management team or the fulfillment team. Hey, contract was approved, Holiday Inn, video on demand webinar op. And then we can mouse over. You can kind of see some of the details and you can follow it. So we basically let the rest of the team know that we won this piece of business, which is pretty exciting. The rest of the functionality around this is really, out of the box Appian. Maybe we're going to say, great job or something. It will be shared with other people who are subscribed to this feed. Perfect. So the other thing that we can do now is we can basically, from Appian, go over to the records interface and look at our Cmas Repositories records. So Cmas Repositories is, again, a proprietary SAIL. Again, SAIL is the user interface technology for Appian. It's a proprietary SAIL component that allows you to basically visually browse through a repository. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail today about this capability. We'll probably have a webinar on this in June or maybe July. But at a high level, we've created a way that a SAIL developer can take this widget and drop it into any application. So in this case, we're looking at the Alfresco contracts repository. And we're interested in the contracts folder. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we have the video on demand webinar opportunity folder. And down here, we actually have a hyperlink. So we can actually get right into, in this case, Alfresco, but it could be, again, SharePoint, Documentum, or FileNet. So it just shows us the capability that Appian has, again, using the standard CMIS connectors, as well as some custom components that we've built on top of it, to integrate any of your back-end document repositories with Appian. The other thing that happened once we did the generation of the document, and I clicked that Done button a couple of steps ago, is that we've basically gone back and we have updated the Salesforce opportunity. So I'll just refresh my screen here. Now, in the Salesforce opportunity page, if you look at the top here, there's a field called Order Link. Again, Order Link is a link for the salesperson, so in this case, Susie Sales, to go directly to the Alfresco repository. So again, we've made it possible that at the end of the business process, all of the key stakeholders, the salesperson, the contract manager, the fulfillment specialist, are all able to get to the information they need. And really, we've I guess we've shown that it's something that you can accomplish with Appian. So Appian is, again, taking care of the information sharing across the 3 different platforms. And that is pretty much the demo that we wanted to show you today. So I'll open it up for questions if anybody wants to ask a question. I think there's a little question window on the bottom that you can type into. Robbie, was there anything you wanted to add around some of the CMIS integration that we just looked at?
Well, I was sort of going to add a bit of color commentary that Cmas is not quite a household name. If you ask a lot of people, people may or may not have heard about it. However, the standard itself has been around for a number of years, and there's adoption is picking up. So what I think we're going to find is if maybe yourself, you haven't heard of it within your organization, but there's likely somebody, especially if you're a medium to large size organization, that are either actively adopting it or looking into it. The other thing I would say, not just from a customer, but from also a vendor perspective, you know, each passing quarter, each passing year, what we're finding is that a lot of the, not just the traditional ECM vendors, but also a lot of the cloud vendors are, you know, they're adding in CMIS capabilities because it's getting demanded of them. Again, it's not a flashy type of capability, but it's kind of the cost of doing business. So this theme is going to continue to recur, especially as organizations, as they grow out or they want to switch technologies. CMIS is proving itself to be fairly effective at, you know, keeping things cost effective and the risks down when you're working with, you know, either moving or migrating your content or just needing to deal with your landscape of content out across your organization and you know, between you know, business to business as well. So I just kind of wanted to layer that in.
What kinds of business scenarios could you see this Appian integration with the CMIS connector being kind of valuable, just based on some experience from some project work you've been doing over the last number of years? Yeah, so we've had a number of, you know, I've been involved with a number of projects where, you know, the customers may not choose. So you might have an ECM product you're working with. It could be SharePoint. That's a good example. A lot of people tend to use that. And a lot of times the choice comes down, you know, you may not want to build on top of your SharePoint application a, you know, you might not want to build like a workflow or a process, you know, a very vendor or specific application. For example, your organization may have chosen, you know, Appian or another type of tool to use. And what I'm saying is that you can use CMIS then on top of your repository to you can kind of choose your own vendors. What I'm trying to drive at here. So you know, one example would be we've had a customer, for example, that had they had all of their policy documents in a SharePoint repository, and this is across around the world. We ended up working with that to implement a BPM solution on top of that, and again, it was involving CMIS that allowed them to keep their content in place. Didn't have to migrate it anywhere special, to keep it there, continue working with it, but again, they're able to layer on their tool and manage their policies, send them out for review and approval. So one example. Another was a U.S. military they actually had an HR application where, again, they had all of their documents and their forms, and this is for you know, when someone gets promoted, they needed to you know, run some paperwork. Well, again, they had a very specific repository they were using. We were able to layer on top of that. They chose a specific eForm BPM tool, and again, plugged that in, and the content was where it's supposed to be. And we were just, again, using that without building massive amounts of integration and custom work. Seems very straightforward for effectively the 10 things they really needed to do. So it's very powerful in that regard. The other thing, David, just one more, is that we've had customers want to do a migration from one repository to another, and again, they built out, or they're looking to build out an application on top of this at the same time. Well, what ends up happening is that you know, you end up running 3 projects at once, right? Because you've got to migrate, potentially migrate your content across. You've got to, you want to build your application, then potentially an integration piece. Well, what we like about CMIS is that it allows you to build all of your business applications on top of CMIS, and then you can swap in and out if you want to migrate or you want to have several different repositories. You know, CMIS doesn't really care; it's agnostic. So again, it's very transparent in the background. So again, cost-effective, really lowers the risk, and it's really supported by, you know, most of the major vendors. So it's that's why it's really gaining a lot of traction. Great. No, those are some great examples. I guess the other piece we should have a little bit of a chat on is really the Salesforce integration. And I know, you know, the cloud is here. You know, there's a basically overwhelming movement towards moving things into the cloud. Even, you know, for example, this whole demo is actually based on cloud environments. We are running on Appian in the cloud, the Alfresco instances in the cloud, the Salesforce is obviously in the cloud. So the cloud is more and more prevalent. On the Salesforce side, we see a lot of organizations that have standardized on Salesforce, and they've decided that Salesforce is the record of truth for their customers and their trading partners. So, that's really important. Once that's already been set up, it's pretty hard to come along and build an Appian process application that's going to interact with customer without tying it into the CRM, in this case Salesforce. So I think using these out-of-the-box connectors for Salesforce connectivity really takes Salesforce and makes it accessible to your end users who are participating in a business process. And I was wondering, maybe Jin, if you could speak to some of the effort that was put in for developing this demo around connecting to Salesforce, some of the opportunities that you can see in terms of how to integrate.
Certainly. So what's really nice about the way Salesforce and Appian play together is that Salesforce actually exposes a very powerful query language. So the connectors that Appian provides, though there's only 3 or 4 of them, actually provide a pretty comprehensive tool set to do really anything that you need to do in Salesforce. Use case examples, anytime that really you need a process to run on Salesforce data, because as a platform, at least in my personal opinion, Salesforce is great as that data warehouse, but it's really lacking in that kind of, well, the process-driven stuff, right? The BPM, the stuff that Appian really excels. So any use case that you can think of where it's a sales process with lots of vetting, this approval process that we quickly rip together here, any sort of interaction or process really where you have several steps that work with multiple systems together, Salesforce simply can't be your integration or your user presentation platform for that, whereas with the connectors and what we showed here, Appian very much can.
Which types of Salesforce interfaces did you exercise via the Appian connectors to to move all those different data elements from the original Salesforce opportunity and present them inside of Appian?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, Salesforce actually presents or created, the SQL language or SQL variant language, which they really use to leverage or expose all the web API functionality. So in this particular case, we really just use a couple of basic select statements or equivalents and a couple of update statements or their equivalents. They provide a couple more advanced APIs in regards to advanced filtering and searching for large data sets, but for the most part, we don't really need to leverage those very heavily. But even if we did, it's again based on a SQL background, so it's very, very easy to pick up.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's pretty much what we wanted to share with everyone today. If you have any follow-on questions, you should have my contact information in the webinar invitation email. And like I mentioned earlier, next month, either in June or possibly July, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive. Since we developed this demonstration probably about a month ago, we've done additional work on our CMIS integration capabilities. So we've started building out a CMIS plugin to augment the Appian connector and add in some additional APIs. And we've also beefed up the sale components, again, this user interface widget that you can see in front of you, to make that content repository browsing experience even richer. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance. And again, if you have any follow-on questions, feel free to send me an email or give me a call. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.